and it is recording. So
Okay.
we are live. And your name is George, and let me see if I can get it right. Kharlakian, is that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a Kharlakian or Kharlakian, but Kharlakian is the more correct pronunciation if
Nice.
you're gonna do the actual Armenian pronunciation of it. But yeah, absolutely. How's it
Yeah,
going?
awesome. And like I think I've told you this before, is I'm a bit Armenian myself. My mom, her maiden name is Amroyan, and that's my middle name. So
Yeah,
got
it's
that
wow,
little
that's awesome.
commonality, small world. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, we've kind of gotten to know each other a little bit just through social media, and you reached out first, kind of looking for a stealth belt,
Yeah.
and you kind of tried it, and we've just also kind of talked about random things, ostomy related and otherwise. And I thought it'd be awesome to just have a chance to interview you, and then inversely, you can interview me, and then we can share it with anybody who might be interested.
Yeah,
But
I
let's start
appreciate the
by
opportunity.
yeah.
Sorry.
So let's just start by hearing a little bit about your story, like who you are, when you got your ostomy, and what that experience has been like for you so far.
So I'm 44 years old. I'm a kindergarten teacher in Toronto, Canada, and about when I was 19 years old, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. But it would turn out to be one of the most accelerated cases of ulcerative colitis in North American history. So I was diagnosed at my 19th birthday, in October before my 19th birthday. And 3 months later, I had my colon removed in January.
Wow.
I was left with temporary ostomy for a very short period of time. And what wound up happening was, because they were going to build what's called a J pouch, and for those people who don't know what a J pouch is, it's basically they use the small intestine internally to build a pouch internally for you, so that you don't have to wear permanent ostomy. Well, I had major complications during surgery and internal bleeding for about 8 or 9 hours that they didn't know about. So I came out of the hospital about 66 pounds, and I had to spend about 3 years recovering from that. During so, I wore an ileostomy, and I wore a temporary jejunostomy. So I had a double barrel for a while, and then I had a reversal. Now, what wound up happening was about 7 or 8 years ago, my bowel health just slowly but gradually kept getting worse and worse and worse. And my J pouch essentially failed about 2.5 years ago. What wound up happening was I was getting multiple what's called fistula trains and all sorts of pain and discomfort, and I couldn't eat. And I was on something called TPN, or temporary paternal nutrition, for about 2.5 years. While they were trying to sort out what they wanted to do for me in regards to a plan to get me healthy again. And ultimately, the plan was to put me on a biologic and to give me a permanent ostomy. Now, my experience with an ostomy, I'm going to say about 20 years ago now, was not a very good one. Not only was it a very challenging one in regards to the technology not being there, in regards to the adhesive and the sounds that the appliance used to make, and the amount of wearable time you used to have. So I had a very, unfortunately, a very negative outlook on what an ostomy would be for somebody who's wearing it permanently. However, we've come a long way in 20 years in regards to ostomy wear. And there have been truly life-changing things. For example, the stealth belt is the perfect example of it, because when I saw it for the first time, there were tears in my eyes, and I will explain why. And I'm sorry if I'm rambling here,
No, it's
but
yeah.
basically, I believe, God designed us in a way where our anus is behind us, so that we don't see our stool necessarily. It's not right in front of us. It's not it's not so much as something that we see every time we go to the washroom. Whereas ostomy wearers, we always have our appliance in front of us. It's always there, whether we're changing our clothes, whether we're getting ready to play a sport, whether we're getting ready for work, whether we're going to be intimate, and on and on and on. It's always there. And for somebody that has never experienced wearing an ostomy before, it's very hard on the mind because of the entire construct of it and the total change in the outlook of how your body used to work and how it works now. The brilliance that I found, the way Stealth Belt has touched my life is the Stealth Belt actually has become an extension of my permanent ostomy. It's something I wear 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And I no longer see a medical appliance that's attached to me. I no longer feel that there is, output coming out of me at any which way or shape or time. I no longer feel very self-conscious in an intimate environment or in an environment where simple everyday things, when I'm going to the gym and when I'm just changing in front of other people. I don't have a medical appliance dangling from my abdomen. I have a belt that looks pretty much like a money belt or any other basically support belt that somebody's wearing. The idea that can change your whole mind frame into something that's more safe and comfortable and really less invasive in regards to something that's constantly going to be a part of you on a permanent basis has really just changed my life for the better in an exponential fashion. Like I can't really explain it, explain in words how much better it's made and how happy I am as a person to wear an ostomy. I'm actually extremely happy to wear an ostomy because I don't have Crohn's colitis anymore. It's being controlled by a biologic very well. And if this is the worst of it, that I have to wear a belt that hides my appliance so well and so comfortably, then so be it. I'm ready to embrace life in every which way.
Yeah,
so
that's long-winded. You said it as well as anyone I've ever heard try and say it. And I like, as somebody who also wears them and started as a customer before I got involved with the company, my experience was very much the same. And it's not always not everybody's experience as to why it'll make a difference in their lives or like how exactly that manifests. It's not going to be the same for every person. But it does have a lot of kind of those small interrelated reasons that kind of, they go into every way of your, every part of your life, in some regard. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the specific ways that you use the Stealth Belt and also kind of what your process has been like to kind of have that really positive mindset towards having an ostomy in general. Because I know that there are a lot of people out there, and I felt like for a long time I was also in that group where despite the fact that I was no longer in pain with having colitis or Crohn's, it's still not something that's real easy to be positive about. And you seem to have a really great outlook. But before we get into that one, because that one will be a deep wormhole, just because I'm curious, because I didn't know you had an ostomy 20 years ago, the reversal, and then the new one.
Right.
Besides the Stealth Belt, what's the main difference in the technology change that you've noticed?
So as far as the actual phalange goes, I've worn two kinds. I've worn the Coloplast model, and I wear currently the Hollister model. What I've really found that's come a long way are two things. It's the wear time has made a massive difference. Actually, probably three things: the adhesion of the appliance and how it relates to skin health has come a very, very long way. And finally, I would say the actual pouch in which kind of waste collects has come a long way. So I'll explain each one. As far as the phalange is concerned, I can't believe how much more flexible and a lot more durable the actual phalange is, first and foremost. I wear a barrier ring around the phalange, and even those are so much more pliable than they used to be. You would very easily have breaks or tears or rips before from doing even simple things like twisting your body in a wrong way, or especially when you're lying down and there's a little bit of waste that collects. That waste would immediately eat at your ostomy, irrespective of whether you had liquid output, solid output, etc. So the resilience of the actual phalanges and the actual barrier rings have come a long way. And then finally, I would say the fact that the pouch itself, for a few things, the drying time of it has significantly improved. The sound, the muffling of the sound, so there's no crackling or cracking like you would hear before. 20 years ago, you'd be able to hear somebody having an ostomy from across the room, no matter
it's like
what
the bag, like kind of being like the crinkling of like a bag almost.
Precisely, absolutely, like your typical grocery bag almost in that regard. And then finally, the fact that there's just so much more of a level of comfort when you're taking the actual phalange off and on. It does not strip away vital parts of the moisture of your skin. Whereas before, if you had, let's say, a leak and you had to change your appliance every like couple of days or every few days, no matter how much you tried or no matter what kind of substances you used in and around your skin around the stoma, it would invariably wind up you would invariably wind up having a skin issue, only because of the trauma that your skin would feel even during the separation of it when you were changing it. So like it's really come a long way. The fact that I can wear my appliance now, as long as I'm wearing my stealth belt, I without a stealth belt, I'm usually about 3 days, and I don't really go without wearing a stealth belt anymore. But with my stealth belt, it's about 5 to 7 days I have a change, and I love that my skin doesn't bear the brunt of it.
Yeah, that's a really long time. I'm usually like 4 or 5 days. I am like extremely highly active and sweat a ton, so I think that's more like just like there's only so much sweat and dry back and forth that an appliance can take. But yeah, I mean, I agree that like having the belt on, definitely you get a little bit more life out of the appliance itself. But man, it's that makes me really thankful for, I guess, the time period that I have my ostomy. Cause you know, I don't, all of those problems that you're talking about, and I haven't really experienced a whole lot of that. You know, I get occasional skin issues and things like that. And, but for them, like really it was after those first few months when I was kind of testing out different things and finding out what worked for me. Haven't had any problems. So it's enlightening to hear that perspective, from somebody who had it back then. So you've got a good perspective on it.
It's pretty interesting because when people write on various forums and whatnot for support, I have a lot of empathy for them because I've actually been on that side where you've had so many skin issues or leaks or constant liquid output and how to deal with that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And back then, we didn't have any gels that you could put in the pouch to thicken your stool. There were no odor-stopping liquids you could use. By the way, which I don't use till this day. I use the exact same thing. I use organic peppermint oil before I put my my new appliance on. I put a few drops, and I'll add a few drops every 2 or 3 days, and you're good to go because it's food grade, right? And so the pouch, it will not be affected by food grade stuff because it's designed for food grade things. Sure, yeah. So, yeah, I mean those things, as you know, like would be an absolute nightmare. Like back in the day, it was really bad. It was very difficult. So I'm just glad that and have a lot of empathy for people that have had to continue using an ostomy throughout that process, and like how far the actual technology has come, and how much these companies have actually taken a lot of people's feedback and used it in a positive way, and
Yeah.
really listened to patients.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they do a really great job on the whole. Like just kind of working in this industry now for 5 years or the better part of that, like the amount of resources that all of the major ostomy manufacturing companies put into getting feedback and then like having actionable steps afterwards. It's really
Right.
cool to see. So that's a nice positive. But yeah, so now let's pivot over and talk a little bit more about like what I was saying earlier, some of the
Right.
some of the things that you've kind of done and like parts of your experience that have helped you have a more positive perspective on just everything that you've kind of gone through and like life as it is now.
Um, I, I find some of the more difficult parts of the real challenge, ironically, was this second time around, which I call very facetiously my second tour of duty. So during this last bout, when I actually found out that I had multiple fistulas and Crohn's colitis instead of just colitis, and a failing pouch, it was really, I swallowed pretty hard, because the constant testing, the not figuring out what was going on and whatnot was very trying on me, considering I've always had a natural affinity to be a positive person. However, that was a real test for me. I didn't really feel that on paper there was a lot going on in regards to a lot of positive things. The news just kept getting worse and worse. Oh, well, now you have multiple fistulas. Well, now you're going to have the fistulas come out somewhere. Okay. And now you're going to have this kind of skin issue on your bottom. And now we have to do this sort of testing to see what's going on. And this MRI is not showing anything. And we don't know where your inflammation is. And we don't know where your pouch health is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. So, for me, it's a matter of digging deep, and the true positivity comes from two things for me. One is my faith, to be quite frank, and the second one is through faith and understanding. The reality is, for me, especially when you see this as an educator, you see a lot of the things some parents go through in life. You see a lot of things that some people go through in life. And I'm going to give you some examples. There were people in the hospital that were there at some point in time next to me, even though my longest stint in the hospital was a year and 8 months. When I was 20, yeah, I was there straight for a year and 8 months, which was pretty brutal. But I saw people in there that were in there and didn't come out per se. I saw situations where people were a lot less worse as far as physical condition than I was, but they didn't have nearly the supports that I did in regards to family, friends, and community. And I saw how it adversely affected them. So I had a choice to make. And the bare bones choice is, you can either embrace what you have and what you have left, or you can really look at what's not there anymore. The problem is when you're looking at what's not there anymore, you're looking at emptiness. You're not looking at anything that you can build with. You're not looking at anything constructive. You are looking at, you're looking behind you. You are looking in a very negative space, and you're looking mainly at a space that you have no control over. It's the past. It's already happened. And you can sit and feel pity and anger and bitterness, and there's a place for that. But if that's what your sole focus is going to be on, you're looking at a black hole. And when you look at a black hole, when you look at darkness, there's just no way out. Whereas if you look at what you do have, and comparably speaking, what you have to work with. Well, it's kind of like sitting at a poker table, and you're around a bunch of friends playing poker. You can either look at the deck that's already been dealt on the side, that's already on the table, and look at cards that you could have played, or you can look at your card and play your best hand and enjoy playing the game, and at least be thankful that you're playing the game. And when you look at it in a way where we have a serious disease, it's got no cure. It has no cure at this point in time. We are blessed to have tools to actually manage it now, whereas many, many years ago, we didn't even have that. Just to give you some reference, the aggressive nature of my Crohn's colitis is such that I've been told by my GI, who is the head of gastroenterology at Toronto Western Hospital, has told me that for Crohn's colitis patients, I would be 1 in 100,000. So that's the level of aggression you're talking about. So it's an extremely small kind of slice of people. For me, I'm just so grateful that there are ways to look forward. There are so many things that I can do as opposed to not doing them. The simplest example I can say is, well, I could sit back and say, okay, well, I have these issues and these issues and these issues, or I can say, well, I have 2 eyes that are working pretty well. I have 2 ears that are working pretty well. I have my body that is willing to recover. And you start building that will for yourself. You start appreciating what you have instead of what you don't have. And you start building yourself up from there. And when you start having a basic appreciation and a basic understanding of where we are in life compared to where mankind was even 50 or 75 years ago. A lot of us who are complaining about what's going on with us wouldn't even be here right now. Unfortunately, we'd perish.
Right.
That's what I build on. And just to give you an example, I've been told as a fact that my positive outlook had helped me recover to where I am now. I am 5'4.5". I'm now 144 pounds. I came out of the hospital at 108 pounds. They had told me that with 1/3 of my small bowel missing and my colon obviously missing, with a permanent ileostomy, I had three outcomes. My worst outcome was going to be being on intravenous and on TPN permanently, but I could still eat. The second outcome, the medium outcome, was going to be IV hydration 2 or 3 days a week. I think 2 days a week, actually. But being able to live, but having a semi-permanent PICC line in my arm. And then the best outcome was going to be anything better than that. They were not expecting me to gain weight. My dream weight with my registered dietitian was 127 pounds. That was my dream. If my dreams came true, I would be at 127 pounds. My goal weight was 124 pounds. I smashed that weight. I smashed that goal roughly 2.5 months out of surgery, and my surgery was 9.5 hours. So I really do believe in positivity. I believe in believing in whatever you believe in, whatever creed, background, religion, life force, wherever you come from, whatever background you feel. I believe in having faith in that. I believe in having faith in yourself. I believe in creating a positive support system around you and kind of almost pruning off anything that's negative around you, so that only the positive grows in your life. We're looking at it as a tree branching out, and here we are, no IV, no PICC lines, gym 2-3 days a week. Going to start ice hockey again very soon, and I'm back at work. So,
man, what more can you ask for, really?
Yeah,
I mean,
I can ask much more than that.
I mean, and like what you're saying, like all of that resonates very strongly with me, like across the board. Even starting from a position of faith, I'm not a particularly religious person. I never have been, but there are certain like underlying elements that are there that I think are really important. And that's like kind of looking at things with a perspective and having some form of faith that things will get better if you stay the course.
Absolutely.
And if faith is what guides you towards that, then like awesome. But I think really just making sure that you have that direction is really important for having a positive outcome and like just that outlook on life. Because I mean, one of my mantras that kind of got me through my experience, and one of the things that I always tell people when they ask kind of similar questions is like control the variables that you have control over.
Right.
And part of that is, one, you have to identify like what are the things that I can control, and then importantly, what can't I control? What is not in my control? And as much as possible, when you've built those two buckets of things, the ones that you don't have control over, like you don't want to completely forget about them, but it's not where you should really be focusing your efforts and your attention on, because whether those things go good or bad, if you're not influencing it, then like it's not really you, so
Yes.
you focus on the things that you've got control over, and make the best of that as possible. And, the outcome, it's not always going to be good, but more often than not, if you're focusing your attention in the right place, that it's going to be better than it would be if you were doing otherwise.
I have to tell you, it still brings tears to my eyes till this day. When I saw that video of you running, and when I saw you using the stealth belt, it was just it reinforced my positivity about what I was going to get into. It made me feel so happy that and credit to you and Richard that there are people that have taken a situation that is very challenging, very difficult for anybody of any walk of life to understand. And instead of just understanding it, you've embraced it. And that makes all the difference, because that is the difference between waking up in the morning and being agoraphobic and not wanting to leave the house and not wanting to communicate with anybody and being very upset and being very bitter and being very and letting life take this kind of whirlpool and just kind of suck you in. And instead of that, you wake up every day knowing that you've taken life by the horns with what you can control, and not only take it, but enjoy it and reframe your idea of normal. My new normal is very simple. I wear an appliance and I put my stealth belt over it, and I am as good as anybody else and feel as good as anybody else, and never have felt any less. And that feeling is worth, I would say it's priceless. It's priceless. If somebody, when I try to explain this to people without ostomies, they kind of get it, but the people with ostomies that have actually tried the belt on and have understood the fundamental change mentally that it makes, because it's not just a physical belt. It's the idea that you no longer have this feeling of for lack of better term, I'm going to say
vulnerability.
Yes, vulnerability and a difference. Just I'm always going to be different. Well, that's really not the case. There are lots of people out there that have permanent patches for diabetes that you don't see. There's lots of people out there that have all sorts of different things that they deal with that you simply don't see. The fact of the matter is that as long as you're comfortable in your own shell, as long as you're comfortable in your own suit, as long as you're comfortable in your own soul, then you're good to go. And that's what that gives me. And that is worth everything, like everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a question for you kind of along that same line. And I know that this in many ways is true for me, but do you feel like, having gone through all of the things that you've gone through, the illnesses, the subsequent surgeries, the recoveries, the relapses back into illness, and then kind of reemerging, do you feel like it's like kind of given you another or a better lease on life? Like, has it actually been not just a reason to kind of shift a perspective, but really like a catalyst for doing that in a way that if you had just had a perfectly healthy, normal life that you might not otherwise have achieved?
It's such a wonderful question, because the reality is until the best example I can give as a parallel is you never really understand how much you enjoy food until you've actually been through starvation. So it's kind of the same idea.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that you know, we've had, no matter what level of Crohn's you've had, you know, if you've been left with a permanent ostomy, or colitis for that matter, the reality is, or cancer, or any other thing that leaves you with a urostomy or an ileostomy or jejunostomy or a colostomy, any ostomy whatsoever. The reality is that you've been through enough where this has been a serious danger in your life, and you would more likely than not be here if you didn't have this surgery and if you didn't have this ostomy. That feeling of being alive is such a rush. It's such a beacon of positivity for me, because, like you said, you don't really, you know, we're lulled into this very, I'm going to say, false sense of comfort, especially when you live in a Western civilization where things are quite comfortable. You can go and buy food whenever you want. You can go and buy medicine whenever you want. Things are very comfortable here in that sense. But, you know, the false sense of security is not understanding that, you know, there are no guarantees in life, and there are things that can actually really turn you for a loop. And for us to actually have a raw understanding of that, a real understanding of that, and knowing how fleeting life can be, and being able to be somewhere so down and so dark, and to be able to climb out of it using sheer faith, resilience, and mindfulness, and a mentality framework that embraces challenge. It's almost like somebody giving you a meal every day, and you just eat not thinking, and then somebody actually puts spice in it for the first time, and you actually taste the spices, and you actually can taste the flavor of the food that you're eating, because the spice is actually bringing out the flavor of the food. That's how I feel about this experience, very much to what you're alluding to.
Super apt analogy, actually. I like that. I don't know if I've heard it put that way, but yeah.
I like. Well, can I ask you a question, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
When you were going through your Crohn's colitis, did you feel that it was you were in a position where your vulnerability was going to get the best of you, or did you feel more like it was something that you were going to take head on, or did it take a while, or how was your process in that regard?
You know, I don't know if I could really categorize it as like one way over the other. I think early on, it was mainly my naivety that kind of drove it, but I just figured like, oh, I'll knock this out. It's not a big deal. But then like there was, for like, as far as like the advancement of the disease, it only took about 8 months for me from diagnosis to surgery. So I had a pretty rapid case as well, not quite 3 months, but it was fast enough that there were no like upticks in remissions. It was just on a pretty steady downward slope.
Right.
And, you know, like yourself, I've always kind of considered myself a fairly positive person, and I put like a high premium on kind of trying my best to maintain that positivity. And like that comes with the understanding that like being positive is not just something, it's not a destination. It's something that you have to constantly work at. Like you have to look for reasons to be positive. And during like some of the darker moments of being ill, it was really hard to find those reasons to be positive. Especially, I think it's compounded, and you share this experience when you're diagnosed at kind of that, like when you're younger and you're in that kind of developmental phase. I think I was 20 when I was diagnosed.
Yes.
And so we were kind of in the same boat that, like, at that time I kind of felt like, and I mean, I still do, I'm only 28 at this point, but like I was still figuring out like who I was. And at that point, like my entire identity was wrapped up in sports and being an athlete. And now all of a sudden that's gone. So like everything that I had drawn my positivity from before was no longer available in my life. So it really did press me to kind of think more creatively about like, what are the reasons to be pushing forward, and like, what do you have to look forward to? And, you know, I didn't always win that battle. Like, I'm going to be honest, I struggled for a long time. And, you know, I have a lot of empathy for people who are having that struggle, because I get it. I mean, I was there. And, you know, looking back, I'm super thankful that I've kind of emerged from the other side, and like, I don't have any health issues to speak of anymore. So it's like, you know, I'm on the lucky end of that spectrum. But, you know, I spent my time in that spot and kind of recognized like how challenging it was. I, like you, also had a really great support system. I probably could have done better to reach out to that group more and make people more aware. But I wanted to be that like strong person that I had like kind of built myself up to be. So I, you know, in a lot of ways I kind of weathered the storm in a way that I wouldn't necessarily recommend other people do themselves.
Yes, absolutely. I find that your story resonates a lot with me. Also because I find you're very honest in everything that you say in regards to both your triumphs and your challenges, and very much to what you were saying. There are a lot of people out there that how can I? So I was reading one of Richard O'Hamel's. He had written a little blog or something online, and I was just reading it. And he said his ultimate goal was for, no matter what, for every ostomate to have some sort of stealth belt that will help them just live a better life. Mm-hmm. And where I'm going with that is like, that very much resonates with me through yourself. There's a unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, there's a brutal honesty that goes with, you know, having an ostomy and talking to a fellow ostomate about the things that you go through in regards to that, especially that stage that you were talking about getting comfortable and having a system that works for you and whatnot. It's not exactly the most enjoyable time, and there's such a variance for everybody, right? Some people take a week and figure out, well, this is the appliance for me, this is the flange for me, this works, and I don't need any of this extra stuff, or I don't need any of this kind of stuff, and this works really well. And there are other people that, you know, it's been like 2 or 3 years and they still don't have something that they feel is a solid or some sort of stable system that they can rely on or that they feel confident in. So it's very interesting to see the reflection that you give in regards to wanting to give that piece back and to tell people that you understand where they're coming from. It hasn't been all, you know, smiles and sunshine up to this point in time, because I think it really makes a difference. I think it's important for people to see that you know, that we have been through a lot of trials and tribulations, and that being positive, very much, I couldn't agree with you more. Is something that is very much, you have to really take care of it, maintain it, work on it in order to stay positive and not let it just kind of slide by and kind of lean on it as this constant pillar to lean on, because just like anything else, it will get weathered and it will shorten, and one day it might not be there if you don't take care of it. So, you know, in that sense, I think what the message that you give it is, I think, really, really important, especially being somebody that is the face of stealth belts in many ways. I think it just really it really resonated with me. It resonated with me in so many different ways, and the people that I've recommended the stealth belt to, especially people who are in position to who are in a position to be able to tell other people about them. So nursing staff at Toronto General Hospital, all my nursing staff here who had taken care of me when I'd gone out of the hospital in the Greater Durham region, the fact that they actually have something to show their clients that will help their quality of life, and to be able to take something that they find medical and turn it into something that is just an extension of their body is an unbelievable thing for me. That is the best thing that I could that I could ever ask for. Honestly, it's almost a joy to wear an ostomy now. For in all honesty, I can't believe I'm saying. If you ask me if I would ever say that in my life, there is no chance I would ever say those words. Before all of it came along, but it was just such an uplifting and wonderful thing. It's a really big deal.
I mean, I'm right there with you. It's so funny. It's like, but it's simultaneously the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Yes.
Like, it's so strange. It's like the weirdest dichotomy that I've come across in life so far. So, but yeah. Anyway, George, I think this is probably a good time for us to stop this for the time being. Hopefully we can pick it back up and do another one of these in the future, but it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Likewise.
Hearing your story, I love it. And
I look forward to putting out some videos too at some point in time when I can get my video game going, so I can show some people some of my positive outcomes through the stealth belt.
Absolutely. Sharing is more the merrier, because you might touch somebody's life and change it for the better. So
yeah, absolutely. Very much like you did. So cheers to you. Yeah. Thanks, Collin.
All right. Thanks, George.
Have a great one.